Rio police release 17 hostages from a gunman on a bus, at least 2 wounded. India's new citizenship law excludes Muslims. Why? The top strategist of late Russian opposition leader Navalny is attacked in Lithuania's capital. Today is Wednesday, March 13, 2024, and this is the Dunkley Report, International News. Brazilian police have released 17 hostages from a gunman that took over a crowded bus in Rio de Janeiro and wounded at least 2 people. The suspect was arrested at the scene, police said Tuesday. Rio police spokesman Colonel Marcos Andrade told journalists all hostages aboard a bus, parked at one of the city's main terminals, had been freed after negotiations with the gunman, who allegedly tried to leave Rio after receiving threats from a crime gang. India has implemented a controversial citizenship law that has been widely criticized for excluding Muslims, a minority community whose concerns have heightened under Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Hindu nationalist government. The Citizenship Amendment Act provides a fast track to naturalization for Hindus, Parsis, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jains and Christians who fled to Hindu-majority India from Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and Pakistan before December 31, 2014. The law excludes Muslims, who are a majority in all 3 nations. The law was approved in 2019, but Modi's government had held off with its implementation after deadly protests broke out in capital New Delhi and elsewhere. Minority Muslims in India worry the government could use the law to further marginalize them. Associates of the late opposition leader Alexei Navalny reported on Tuesday night that the politician's close ally and top strategist was attacked near his home in Lithuania. Kira Yarmish, who had been Navalny's spokesperson, said the assailant smashed a window of Leonid Volkov's car, sprayed tear gas into his eyes, and started hitting him with a hammer. Police and an ambulance was on the way, Yarmish said. The attack took place nearly a month after Navalny's unexplained death in a remote Arctic penal colony, and just days after Russia's presidential election that Vladimir Putin is almost certain to win after eliminating all the opposition. Volkov left Russia under pressure from the authorities several years ago. The head of the African Development Bank is calling for an end to loans given in exchange for oil or critical minerals used in smartphones and electric car batteries. Such deals have left some African countries in financial crisis and have helped China control the extraction of critical minerals, such as cobalt, in Congo. Akinwumi Adesina said in an interview with the Associated Press that these arrangements come with a litany of problems, pointing to uneven negotiations, where lenders typically dictate terms to cash-strapped African nations. He says a lack of transparency and potential for corruption also help create fertile ground for exploitation. At least 11 African countries have taken loans secured with their natural resources since the 2000s. Some of the most closely watched news conferences happen during China's annual meetings of its ceremonial legislature. The sessions are a rare opportunity to engage directly with officials, yet the space for that engagement is shrinking. Carefully screened questions are now the norm at news conferences, ensuring that fewer politically sensitive issues are raised. This year, breaking with 3 decades of tradition, officials said they would no longer host a news conference with the premier, removing a once-a-year opportunity for journalists to ask questions of a top Chinese leader. The changes reflect China's transformation under Xi Jinping, its most powerful leader in decades. A federal judge has approved the $92 million bond put up by former President Donald Trump to ensure that writer E. Jean Carroll will receive a jury award for his verbal attacks against her if it survives appeals. Judge Lewis A. Kaplan formally approved the bond on Tuesday, a day after lawyers agreed there was no argument over it. The bond, offered by the Republican 2024 presidential frontrunner, comes after Trump's lawyers announced they were appealing the verdict to the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. Over the weekend, Trump resumed his attacks on Carroll's credibility. Her lawyers say a third defamation lawsuit is possible. Lawmakers are facing their latest lobbyists, online influencers from TikTok. The platform is once again bringing influencers to Washington, this time to lobby members of Congress. The company wants lawmakers to reject a fast-moving bill that would force TikTok's Beijing-based parent company to sell or face a ban in the United States. Some online content creators are beginning what's poised to be a 2-day lobbying and advocacy event in support of TikTok. The platform arranged their trips to Washington ahead of a House floor vote on the legislation on Wednesday. The number of robberies of postal carriers grew again last year, and the number of injuries nearly doubled, even as the U.S. Postal Service launched crackdown aimed at addressing postal crime. Figures provided to the Associated Press indicate postal carrier robberies reached 643 last year. That's an increase of nearly 30%. Also, robberies resulting in injuries doubled to 61 among letter carriers last year. Houston postal carrier Tijuana Abbott says postal carriers feel like sitting ducks. The Postal Service began a crackdown last year that included hundreds of arrests, while replacing tens of thousands of the universal keys sought by criminals, and robberies slowed over the past 5 months. The Uvalde police chief, who was on vacation during the Robb Elementary School shooting, has resigned. The announcement Tuesday came less than a week after a report ordered by the city defended the department's response to the attack, but outraged some family members of the 19 children and 2 teachers who were killed. Uvalde Police Chief Daniel Rodriguez was vacationing in Arizona when a teenage gunman entered a 4th-grade classroom in Uvalde with an AR-style rifle. His resignation takes effect in April. David Mixner, a longtime LGBTQ+ activist who was an advisor to Bill Clinton during his presidential campaign and later called him out over the "don't ask, don't tell" policy regarding gays in the military, has died. He was 77. LGBTQ+ Victory Fund President and CEO Anisi Parker says Mixner died Monday at his home in New York City. In 1991, Mixner was one of the founding members of the organization, which recruits and supports LGBTQ+ candidates. In a statement, the Victory Fund calls Mixner a courageous, resilient, and unyielding force for social change at a time when our community faced widespread discrimination and an HIV/AIDS crisis ignored by the political class in Washington. Thank you for joining us here at the Dunkley Report International News. Don't forget to like and subscribe for the latest breaking stories.